The Shin Megami Tensei and Persona series feature a wide array of demons and supernatural figures, but one it seemingly mostly stayed away from is Jesus Christ, the central figure of Christianity. And this is talking about Jesus specifically and literally, not the Father who has been portrayed in the games, though more of a traditional Jewish interpretation. And we're also excluding Christ's symbolism. Many have asked why he's been excluded from the roster, and although it's pretty freaking obvious why, there is actually a case to be made he is in the games, even as recently as 2024, hiding in plain sight. But let me first cover a couple of close contenders. Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner features Agony, a demon clearly alluding to Christ, though this being more of a visual metaphor for him than an actual representation. And since Persona 3, Messiah has been a featured summon, and in most incarnations, no pun intended, is the ultimate fusion of the Judgment Arcana. He can also learn the move Absorb Pierce, which is also a clear allusion to Jesus and ties in with the main protagonist very purposefully. Now, while these two have been the most common ones pointed to in this conversation, there is a third being that is often overlooked who might be closer to a literal interpretation of Jesus than both of them, and that is Melchizedek. Melchizedek is a biblical figure from the book of Genesis. In the book, he is identified as the king and high priest of Salem, a place identified with Jerusalem. Abram, who would later become Abraham, the Hebrew patriarch of the Abrahamic religions, is blessed by him and given bread and wine. This was when Abram was returning from pursuing the kings who came from the east, and he gave him a tenth of everything, otherwise known as tithing, a practice done where one donates a portion of their income, usually 10%, to the religious institution. This is one of only 2 times Melchizedek is ever brought up in the Bible at all. The next mention of Melchizedek is in the New Testament in the Epistle to the Hebrews. Here he's said to have no origin, meaning no parents or any sort of genealogy, beginning or end. And the only other figure in the Bible said to have such traits is God himself. And Jesus is identified as the high priest forever in the order of Melchizedek, which indicates that Jesus himself has assumed the role of high priest once and for all. This all indicates in Christian theology that Melchizedek is in fact Jesus, as Jesus is the only member of the Godhead with a physical body. This is what's known in theology as a Christophany, or an appearance of Jesus prior to him being, well, Jesus. Now, this interpretation isn't agreed on by all Christians, so it's not consensus or anything, but it's also not an uncommon belief, and the passage in Hebrews seems to suggest if he isn't Jesus, he's some sort of precursor or prefiguring of him. Some also suggest that Jesus made a claim supporting this as well in the Gospel of John, where he's quoted saying, "Abraham your father rejoiced to see my day. He saw it and was glad." Though, I'm not sure, this could also be understood as him saying like he knows Abraham in like heaven or something. The big connection made is the bread and wine Melchizedek offers Abram, as a symbolic precursor to communion. According to Gnostic traditions, however, this connection is a more widely accepted interpretation, primarily from the Nag Hammadi library, discovered in 1945, tracing back to at least the 4th century or earlier. Altogether, the game's interpretation of Melchizedek is much more in line with Gnosticism, which portrays him not only as someone identified with Jesus, but also a transcendent angelic being that imparts gnosis, or spiritual knowledge, and justice, hence his alignment with the Justice Arcana. This is also why his abilities and moves often focus on light and holiness. So while we'll most certainly never see Jesus Christ himself in the series, here's at least another contender for the pointless discussion.